Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm honored today to have candidate for Mayor Mitch Roth here with me on my lanai, and we're going to talk story and talk about some issues that face West Hawaii and the island. But first, I just want to thank Mitch for coming over and
thank you.
Spending the time campaigning over here in West Hawaii. And what did you do today? What else did you do today?
Oh, so we started at about 5:45, went to the Kinaole Farmers Market, then we started heading over to Waimea. We met with some people in Waimea. We met with some farmers over there, the tomato farmers. We did some sign waving. We met with some people at a park over there. Then we went to Waikoloa, met with some people in Waikoloa. At the farm, they gave us some tomatoes, so we've been dropping off tomatoes. We brought you some beautiful tomatoes.
Eat those for dinner tonight.
Kaumata Farms. And here we are. It's like fifth or sixth thing that we're at today. It's but we made it.
Right on. And I just want to mention, Mitch and I actually go pretty far back. Years ago in my previous life, I worked for the governor here in Hawaii, and Mitch was at the prosecutor's office prior to becoming the prosecutor, but he did a lot of good work in the community. You can look up his bio and see all of that stuff, but when he decided to run for mayor, I definitely knew who the guy I would be voting for was going to be because of that history, and there's definitely no doubt in my mind that Mitch has deep love for our community, and so I'm really glad that somebody like that is stepping up in this. We were just talking about the political climate nowadays and how nasty it can be, and a lot of good people don't run for office because of that, and so thank you for stepping up and putting yourself out there, because it's not an easy time to do it. But since we're in South Kona, the first question is Managos or Tashimas?
Well, that's a tough one. Managos.
Didn't even have to think twice.
Yeah, Managos. I like Tashimas, but I mean Managos is. That's a.
I can't argue with you on that one, because my grandma's farm is actually right next to Managos, so I grew up being able to walk up there and pick up dinner and bring it home, and still did live pretty close until recently, and definitely one of my kids' favorite place to eat. So.
Well, you're still pretty close.
Still pretty close. Yeah.
I understand DJ. It's not the pork chop, but it's the hamburger steak for him.
For DJ, that's the choice.
He'll grow into a more refined taste.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into a couple of issues. Since I got you and you're on my video, I got to ask about my personal pet peeves. So, I don't ask the county government to do too much for me on a daily basis or weekly basis, but something that really irritated me was when we had budgeting troubles, and they shut down the rubbish dumps, and only made the rubbish dumps open for a couple of days a week in different places, especially in the rural areas. And then what happens is people just go and leave their trash at the gate and make a huge pile of trash, and it just seems like from a budgetary standpoint, that should be kind of have a higher priority to me to keep our island beautiful and avoid that kind of thing. So is that something that we can fix? I mean, what do you think about that?
I think it's something that we can definitely fix. But the real shame here is that we knew 20 years ago that the Gila landfill was going to be shutting down, and we really haven't done anything. We're now hauling rubbish from the Hilo side to Waikoloa, which is taking a lot of manpower. And they're ending up closing the gates. I think we need to get a solution pretty quick. There's things that we're looking at. One of the things we're looking at is waste to energy. That's a possibility. One of the things we're looking at is sort stations. What's really frustrating right now is we were recycling, and we were able to teach our community to sort the plastics, the cardboard, the glass.
Yep.
And we stopped doing that, and that's going to take us a little bit of time to teach people how to keep stuff out of the waste stream, but how to sort.
Right.
I was looking at something just yesterday as one of the possibilities is taking those plastics. Columbia does this. They shred it up. They make it into like a fine dust, and then they turn it into building material.
Right.
Like build houses and stuff like that. Right. May cost $1 million to set up a plant, but that's nothing
compared to the cost savings. Yeah.
Compared to the cost savings, but having our waste facilities open is really important. And like you said, when they're closed, people start dumping stuff outside.
Yep.
So we need to come up with some solutions. The other solutions we're looking at is digesters. And with digesters, they can use some of that stuff out in in agricultural, and there's a lot of other things that we can do. Matter of fact, did you know? I bet you didn't know this. Don't laugh at me.
Okay.
But did you know that we have the best recycling program in the country on this island?
I did not know that. Measured by how?
Well, well, first off, I'm not talking about the county of Hawaii.
Okay.
I'm talking at PTA.
Okay. True. So, yes, I'm aware of that.
So they won the award for the best military base in recycling. They recycle about 70% or 60% of everything that goes onto that base is recycled or reused or repurposed. And there's so many lessons we can learn up there.
Yep.
But too often in government, this, that government says, well, that's not the way we do things. To which you have to ask the Dr. Phil question, which is, how's that working for you?
Right.
And if it's not, then you change. And I think there's an opportunity with everything going on to make some really big changes in government.
I like it. Okay. So moving on to being that we're here in West Hawaii, and there's sometimes a perception, I don't always agree with it necessarily, but there's definitely a perception out there that, majority of the tax revenue, because of our higher priced real estate, the majority of the county property tax revenue comes from West Hawaii, and then the money gets spent elsewhere and we don't get our fair share. And sometimes it may not be a totally accurate perception, but it's out there. And how would you address something like that if somebody says we're not getting our fair share of county tax revenue?
Yeah, and I think there's actually some truth to what's happening. I think that there's a lot of projects that should have got off the ground here in West Hawaii that really haven't. And I think right out the gate, there's a couple of projects that we have to work on. One is the Kealakekei wastewater program over there. There was a case that came out in Maui. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled against Maui, and we have a similar situation. So we're going to need to build that infrastructure. We have roads, and I know where you live now, and I bet when you're driving in traffic, you're just happy as can be because
nobody's here.
Right now, nobody's here. But we need to work on the bypass road, and in one of the debates, Mayor Kim talked about there being something. I've actually been looking into that, and I've started asking people who sat on a task force before to actually start meeting again. And I believe that may be one of the first things that we'll also be able to do is actually, build the Ali'i corridor bypass, and I think there's some real possibilities. There's other things on West Hawaii side that infrastructure, homelessness, roads are always big deals, but also allowing for people to build.
Right.
We don't want to get out of control, but there's no affordable housing out here.
Yep.
For teachers, for police officers, firefighters, and hotel workers. A lot of those projects are being stifled by the government. And so there's a part of putting money back into the economy, but there's also a part of allowing the economy to really succeed.
Well, I think what you're touching on there is making housing affordable versus affordable housing, right? Correct. A lot of times the discussion in government is, when you talk about affordable housing, it's how does the government provide some type of housing, which we've seen time and time again in this state and everywhere else, never really is successful. Or when it is built, it becomes like a ghetto, right? It's like a place that you wouldn't necessarily want to live. And I think what you're touching on is super important, that there's lots of people out there who would love to build a home, but it's so expensive. People ask me, in the real estate world all the time, people who are moving here or people that want to buy and subdivide and maybe build a house, why is nobody doing it? Or why are the only developments that we have in Kona multi-million-dollar developments at Kohana Iki and Holalai and all of those places? And it's because it's so expensive. If you have a 20-acre piece of land and you want to turn it into 40 buildable lots for local people to build on, it's so extremely expensive to do that there's no way you can do it without building $1 million plus house on it to make any type of profit. And it's unfortunate that, and that's a government created problem, right? Would you agree with that?
That's absolutely a government created, and I'll give you a specific example. You know the College Palama Nui. Right above there, I was meeting with some
What's
people.
going on with that? That never happened, right? Wasn't there supposed to be a development there?
So they're still working at it. You know, and I met with the developers the other day, and they wanted to bring me through this. And let me take two different parts.
Okay.
One, that project's been going on for 10 years.
Yep.
And a big part of that problem is the government keeps on telling them to do different things.
Moving the goalpost. Right?
Moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
So their goal is to have affordable housing, housing that is affordable. So 10 years of having to go back and forth. Unfortunately, time is money, and when you have to make changes, those changes cause things to be more expensive, and you know we're talking millions of dollars.
Yep.
Well, those millions of dollars need to go somewhere, come from somewhere.
Right.
And you know, unfortunately, that will go on those houses that were supposed to be for, you know, for teachers, for hotel workers, from police, for firefighters. So it's got to go somewhere. So how do you change that is really what's happened. And I know that we've had administrations that looked at, we're going to go in there and we're going to change the rules, we're going to streamline things, and we're going to do it through computers, or we're going to do it through other things. And they've tried. And you know, to a certain degree they've succeeded, but mostly not succeeded. And so as I look at this and go back to my days of, you know, teaching problem solving, doing the scanning and doing the analysis, what I've come up with is this: how do you make the changes in the permitting process, the planning process, to make homes more affordable, but more than that, to allow businesses to thrive and succeed, allow our community to thrive and succeed. So the first thing is you need to have a timeline. As a prosecutor, when I charge a case, I have a timeline. It shouldn't be more difficult to build a house than it is to try a murder case.
Correct.
Okay, so you put, you know, what is it, 30, 45 days. I bring in the plans to you. You have 30, 45 days to approve. That's one. The second thing that needs to happen is when the county is dinging you on, you know, your plans, saying you need to make changes, we're going to make it a rule that you have to cite to the specific code or law that requires the changes.
Okay.
If I just tell you, and then you got to change this, and you don't know where the law is that says what you need to change,
right,
it makes it difficult. So that those two things, a timeline and citing to the law, are things that are measurable. So
right,
if you're not doing it, then that's something that you can
hold somebody accountable for.
You can hold somebody accountable.
Yep.
The second, so you have those. The third thing that we need to do is, if the county is telling you you have to make changes, we need to have a one bite at the apple rule. In other words, you come in and I have you make these changes of A, B, and C. You make the changes of A, B, and C. You shouldn't have to come in and now make D, E, and F.
Right, right.
So Palama Nui, I was asking them, how many changes do you think you've had to make? They said they've done this maybe 50 times. Those changes are money. And again, those are something you can hold somebody accountable. We have a rule now. The rule is only one bite of the apple. How come you didn't catch it in the first time?
Right.
Sorry, okay, that's, you know, you have to write people up, you write people up,
Yep,
you hold them accountable, and you move on. And finally, the thing that we need to do is we need to have a common sense, black and white interpretation of the law versus an interpretation of the most restrictive means. So if you see what's happening, we have some of the planning rules and some of the building rules, and the rules kind of change because it's an interpretation. It's interpreted differently from Kona to Hilo. It's sometimes interpreted differently from one cubicle
one planner to one planner.
And that's why you have them coming back. Well, this guy reviewed the plans, and he wasn't looking for this.
Yeah.
Sorry, you know, we have a one bite at the apple rule now. You know, we make sure we get it right the first time, because if we don't get it right, not only is housing not affordable, but businesses aren't thriving, and if businesses aren't moving, and the economy's not moving, people don't have jobs, and they're not putting food on the plates for their kids. And right now we're getting into some scary times with a lot of people, about 40% of our residents being unemployed. We need to make sure that we can get them back to work in a safe manner, and make sure our economy is moving, so our kids are being fed, and we're not creating more homeless.
I think that's a good segue into one of my biggest fears, and one of the motivations that I had for being involved in politics for years was, and my kids are younger then, they're a little bit older now, but it's very scary to think that, and I think you already have experienced this personally, where if your kids grow up and they want to raise their families here, they can't because it's too expensive, or we don't have the economic opportunities for them here. And that's something that this COVID thing, to me, has really exposed the weakness that we have, where we got nothing else. The hotels and all the tourism shut down, and there's no other industry for people to work at. And this is not a new problem, right? But how do we change that mindset where we build other sectors? We have so many resources here, whether it be volcanology or astrology or marine sciences, agriculture. I mean, there's so many sectors here we could have high-tech, high-paying, clean jobs, right? Not stuff that just relies on development and tourism, but it just seems like there's never any push to actually move in that direction.
See, I see these as great opportunities. And this is a time where we have great opportunities to show the world how to do this. My son, actually all three of my kids are living on the mainland now. My son's working for NASA on the Mars rover program. And
why couldn't they do that here at Pakuloa, right?
Well,
they could if we
think about this for a second. He works at JPL. JPL's this big place, but for the last 6 months, he hasn't stepped foot into the office. Everything's been done online.
Remotely.
So we have the opportunity of really rethinking a lot of the jobs that we have, having people work remotely. We also have the opportunity of making some huge changes on how we view technology and what we're doing in technology, building our infrastructure. I was talking to one of the guys at Pisces about this HAS program. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's a fixed wing, like 100 yards fixed wing flying thing.
Okay.
I think that's the technical term.
Okay.
Flying thing.
All right.
Run on electricity.
Okay.
So it's silent.
Okay.
And it kind of goes around in a circle, then gets up into the stratosphere, sits up there for 3 months at a time.
Okay.
And you don't have to have 5G, you can have 4G mobile that would cover the whole island, 200.
Wow. Okay.
So that's a possibility of not only putting that up there, but putting it up for the rest of the state and maybe in other places. So now you're creating, an aerospace industry.
Yep.
We have
so you can live in rural South Kona on a cheap piece of land, but have high speed internet. Yeah.
You have agricultural opportunities. A lot of people think about agriculture and diversifying agriculture. What are the answers on diversifying agriculture? Well, if you're diversifying, it means generally you're doing something different. Right. So that's the first thing. So a lot of our farmers are struggling because they feed people in the hotel industry. They feed restaurants, and people aren't going to restaurants. But
we're not exporting our agriculture. It supports the local economy here, and then when that shuts down,
it's not even supporting, because we're importing about 90% of our food. So we look at that a little bit differently, and you start looking around the world at places like Israel. If you think about Israel should not be an agricultural superpower.
Haven, right?
I mean, it's
in the middle of the desert.
In the middle of a desert. Well, they went to technological changes.
Right.
We were out today at the Kalamata Farms, and just amazing to see how they're adapting. Growing things hydroponically, just really super clean growing environments to make sure that everything is protected, not in the ground and the soil. They're changing. I think there's opportunities really to change a lot of what we are taking in here and how we're doing things. So those are some opportunities. We have tilapia. You know how much tilapia the military takes in?
I bet it's a ton. Those fish burgers at the chow hall.
Most of those fish that they're taking in is tilapia.
Okay.
Where does tilapia come from? Most likely it's going to be from Asia. Why?
Philippines, yeah.
Philippines, Asia. Why is it being grown in America? The answer is most places in America have environments that are too cold to grow.
Yep.
Where you grow it here?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, we had tilapia at our ag department at Konoana. That was a big piece of the.
So these are opportunities. We just, when there's these adversities, it's an opportunity for us to start thinking, hey, there's some real opportunities. One of the interesting things, I started talking to the people at like Kukio and the people at Manalani and Mauna Kea that are just got taxed.
Right.
And they're very upset with what's happening. They give a lot of money to the nonprofits, and there's some real great opportunities. Some of these people own some of the biggest corporations in the world.
Yep.
Why aren't we tapping into their brain power?
Totally.
And they're here. They want to be part of the community.
Yep.
They want to be able to help out and things like that. So those are opportunities that we have. So I'll let you go back to asking questions.
I like it. No, this is a good discussion. I had a couple of, because a lot of people that watch this are going to be real estate related. I had a couple of real estate questions that I want to hit on. I wanted to end with all that good stuff, but that was awesome. Awesome information, and definitely I think it's a good display of where you're coming from and how you think. But some simpler, more real estate related questions. Big issue I see is that a lot of people cheat on their homeowners exemption, right? And there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for when we're talking about revenue, instead of raising taxes, collecting the taxes that are already out there that are on the table that we're probably not collecting. And do you think that's an issue? I mean, I it's anecdotal for me. I don't know if there's any widespread studies on it, but I know for sure there are people that do not live here or are living in a second home or whatever that are getting half off their taxes and cheating.
And so people know you and I haven't really talked about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
It wasn't really something that was on my radar until earlier this week.
Okay.
I was doing a Zoom call with people in the hospitality industry, and somebody brought it up to me about people who were actually having vacation rentals that were trying to have these homeowner exemptions. And so I started looking into that. And today I was doing a sign waving, and one of my friends from the county who works in that department was there. And I asked her this question, and she told me, it's a 10%, they roll it back for a couple of years.
Right.
And they add on, a penalty.
Right.
The penalty is only 10%, and some of them are getting upset and telling me how this goes. I said, well, we could probably strengthen that law a little bit because.
Or just find the folks. I mean, we were talking about building permits earlier. They're so stringent about, you're wrong on this and you're wrong on that, but then it seems like there's absolutely no double checking or enforcement when it comes. I mean, you file a paper for the homeowner's exemption and they let you keep it for as long as you don't tell them that you've moved or you've done something differently. They let you keep it, and there's really no due diligence to make sure that the county's not giving you basically a 50% discount on your taxes.
I don't know if you want me to go into a funny story.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
So I sat, and this came up in something last night. I was at a dinner, and one of the people that was there was saying, "You remember when we sat on that building code task force?"
Okay.
And I was, "Oh yeah, I was telling him the story. Part of the thing was that, the building department was going after people about 15 years ago for, they're going after them for not having their permits, but they weren't doing anything when there was unpermitted. So we started talking about this, and I told him when I was, this is when I was working with you, saying, look, we'll prosecute if you do an investigation. And so I'd get these things, and it would say, Dylan Noaka, your house on Keikoa Road and wherever it is not in compliance with the permitting process. you have until October 1st, 2020 to come into compliance. And we dated, what are we, August 29th? And so I get this thing and say, okay, Mr. Nanaka has until October 1st, and I just put it aside. And,
Nobody checks.
And it would say notice of violation. And so I say, okay. So after 6 months, I talking to the head of the building division, I said, so I haven't gotten any complaints. He said, oh, yes, you have. I said, no, I've got these warnings, but no investigations. So, we send you these all the time. I said, well, let me give you an example. I got this one for Dylan Nanaka. He has until October 1st. What happens after October 1st? He says, that's not my job. So wait. That's a violation. I said, no, that's a warning.
Right.
Because October 1st is another couple of months.
Right. You have to verify that no action is taken, and
that's not our job. Like, oh man. So we went back and forth and said, look, the prosecutors aren't the one that do the investigation. They follow up.
They take the information.
Is there enough to go forward? Yes or no?
Right.
And the answer is no, because I don't know if Mr. Nanaka's complied or not after October 1st. He's got until October 1st. And they went back and forth with me, and sometimes that's the way government works. They don't think outside of where they're at.
We run into that a lot, where we go to sell a house, or we're helping a buyer buy a house, and we review the building permits, and the electrical permit is complete and approved, the plumbing permit is complete and approved, and then the building permit's not. So what happened there? Like, they just not send anybody out? Of course, most regular people, they don't know to follow up. Their contractor didn't follow up. It was 10 years ago when they built the house, and then now you run into this big issue where appraisers aren't gonna approve the house for lending, and there's all kinds of issues. And it's the process is totally sometimes missing steps, where how can you have a building permit approved completely, but the plumbing permit's still open? And I say, well, how did they approve the whole building permit if the plumbing permit wasn't approved? So, yeah. Okay, so moving on. How about vacation rentals? It's been a big issue here in the last 12 months or so, and right now it's even kind of changed a little bit, where not just having enforcement or a permitting process for vacation rentals, but now you have the planning director interpreting the mayor's directive and
that's a keyword, interpreting.
Yes, okay, interpreting that the mayor's directive plus the vacation rental ordinance is saying that you can't long-term rent your vacation rental if you have a short-term vacation rental permit, and I get the intention behind it, but man, is that backwards when in terms of like affordable housing, or helping folks get here if they want to come here, and if there's a traveling nurse or something, they need a long-term rental, and why can't we just turn a short-term vacation rental into a long-term rental? I mean,
So this is where my experience as a lawyer has given me a step up, perspective and an advantage over all of the other candidates that were in this race, and now my opponent, is I tend to do these crazy things like look at the law and see
read
it. So I went and I read it.
Yeah.
Because the planning director said you can't take off one hat and put on another one.
Yeah. But where does it say that?
So I said, I gotta go take a look at this hat language.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say that.
Right.
It said something to the effect of, if you permanently, quote unquote, permanently give up your vacation rental.
Okay.
Then, you have to inform the, so, I did this other crazy thing. I went and I looked in the dictionary to what the plain meaning, because there was no definition of permanently.
Okay.
And do you know what the definition in the dictionary said? Probably what you're thinking.
Doing something forever.
Forever. Like so Dylan, if I own a house and this thing called COVID comes, and the best use of the house is no longer a short-term vacation rental while COVID is going on, and I say, you know what, I want to do a lease to you.
Family who wants to move home.
I want to do a lease, and when they're done with this lease, I want to go back to a short-term vacation rental, provided that there's no COVID. So that moves from that word permanent to a word called temporary.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how long that period is, because in my mind, I'm not permanently.
Right.
So, I'm not sure how you can even go to where they went. But that law is so messed up.
Yeah.
The mayor asked me. I said, well, there's some good things in there, and there's some bad things. But I can debate you on either side of that law, because there's another thing that says if you're in a neighborhood and there's not enough, parking, street, like where you're living.
There's no street parking.
There's no street parking. There's a house that they're going to do a vacation rental, and you ask all the neighbors, that should probably be denied. So I'm reading through the law, and it says, all these procedures that, you have to go through. And there's nowhere in the law that says that the planning director could do anything.
Right.
How dumb is that?
Yeah.
So that law needs to be changed. But, the problem is if you don't understand the law, and you
or how to write a good law.
Or how to write a good law. Or how, when you look at laws, if they're written well, and you have someone saying, this is what it means, and then you go and you read and go, you may think that means it, but the plain black and white letter of the law doesn't say that. We have several of those.
I had a county council member tell me, who will remain nameless, that they just had to do something because everybody was complaining. So they didn't really think it through that well, which is obviously what happened. So. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where, I get it, there's a need for some type of regulation, but when you come to times like this, there's also some common sense that has to be applied, and we're double not being sensible when we're not allowing people to rent something long-term, when there's obviously a need for long-term rentals. So
I've learned never to confuse common sense and government.
That's right. Good. As long as you know that going in. All right, so we've been
From
going.
The government employee here. Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, you weren't always in the government, so you got to have some of you got to bring some of that perspective with you. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been going for a little while here. I appreciate the time. You got anything else you want to share with everybody before we wrap up here?
I just really appreciate you taking time out. I thank everybody for watching. Hopefully this was interesting to you.
Well, it always is. for the 4 people that watch me.
The 4 people, okay. Hey, my wife's going to watch. You're going to have 5 tonight.
There you go. Right on. Well, thanks for taking the time. I'll definitely, if you guys have any questions for Mitch, just let me know, put them in the comments. I'll pass those on. Maybe we'll do a follow-up segment here in a little while. But we got a few weeks left here. How many more weeks we got for voter registration? I should know.
You can actually register all the way up until
the last day.
Until the last day.
Okay.
But if you want to get the mail-in ballots, I think we got about another month or so to get those done. So
that's the most important thing: is if you don't vote, don't grumble. You have an opportunity to choose some new leadership here for the first time in a long time here on the Big Island, and definitely a real fresh perspective. So I encourage you guys to get out there and vote. And thanks again, Mitch. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you. Give you a fist bump there. Still in COVID times.
Yeah, still in COVID times. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks.